I had a conversation with you last year here, Jack.
That's right.
Incredible presentation on the state of quantum, and joining me to help me with this really complicated topic is my colleague Olivia.
Hello, Olivia.
It's great to have you back. Okay, Jack, what has changed since last year when you and I talked about this?
Well, the space has exploded.
Right.
When we look at AI and quantum, we're seeing a lot of developments and also impact on critical national infrastructure and on defense. LLMs obviously growing in applications, and that's great, but for 85% of the critical national infrastructure and for defense, we also need the quantitative side. We're working on new metals and alloys for the Army, in terms of new tank applications, things like that. Working on new battery chemistries. We all know about the dependency we have on PRC for lithium, for battery-grade lithium, for neodymium, and other kinds of rare earths. It's really time, and this Pentagon has really had a focus on getting off of that dependency, and a huge part of that is going to be using this kind of AI. AI that understands material science and understands physics and engineering, not large language models, but complementing that large quantitative models, LQMs, complementing LLMs. So it's been explosive in terms of the applications.
Yeah, I mean, I interviewed Mike Cadenazzi earlier,
Yes.
Jack, and we talked about material science and how this is important.
Rocks to rockets.
Yes. Do you feel we're finally moving with resources, with action, with everything we need to get ahead of this? I asked them, like, we've been admiring this problem for so many years, and that's why we end up in this position where China holds, advantage over some of the critical aspects in this tech competition.
Well, I think hopefully this year and next year will be the years to make it happen. March 5th of this year, Ilya, as you know, PRC launched its 15th five-year plan. And that five-year plan follows on the 14th five-year plan. In the 14th five-year plan, they focused on biotech, and they succeeded in really coming to great progress in biotech. This new plan, they're focused on AI, on quantum, and on novel material science. Those are three of the big areas. And so we really got to step up to the plate. This is the moment.
I see there's something that you're quite passionate about.
Get closer to the mic, Olivia.
Thank you, Ellie. There's something that you're quite passionate about, and this kind of talks to the convergence of quantum and AI. I know LLMs are kind of the hot topic right now, but you're passionate about something called LQMs. Would you mind discussing a little bit about what they are and some of their applications?
Great question, Olivia. So what is a large quantitative model? Well, large language model, we know how to train that. We take the language of the web, we download that onto a vast computer system and then train a huge model to understand how to generate more language from the language that it trained on. And Gemini is a great example, ChatGPT, Claude, three great examples of large language models that are impacting today. But those are really productivity tools, right? We can get documents done faster, we can get some spreadsheets done faster. When it comes to, that's AI for the digital world, Olivia, that's really what it is. AI for the real world is something completely different. And the real world is when we have to do real science and engineering. And if we want to make a hypersonic missile, for example, we've got to think about materials. We just came from the F1 track just last week, and an F1 is made of 70% carbon fiber. And so to design these carbon fiber kinds of bodies, not just for F1 cars, but ultimately for defense applications, automotive applications, much broader, we need quantitative AI. So LQMs are not trained on the words of the internet. In fact, we don't download anything from the internet. Instead, we at Sandbox AQ have to build our own data sets. We've got to start from scratch and think about experiments we can run in real labs, and we've got to think about data based on equations that we run millions and millions of times in large computer systems, Nvidia GPU chips, Google TPU chips, and these systems allow us to output huge databases. We have data sets now in catalysts, in batteries, in biopharma. These data sets allow us to train specialized quantitative models, not language models, not transformers, but LQMs that really focus on this area. This past 10 months, we launched 3 frontier models with Nvidia, with Nvidia's collaboration, and these models are now state-of-the-art when it comes to making new kinds of battery chemistry, making new catalysts. Catalysts are fundamental to our economy and our defense, and new biopharma molecules for cancer, for Alzheimer's. These are the frontier models that are in the quantitative world.
That's really fascinating. And you've touched on how it has applications across biopharma, chemicals, and defense. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about some of these defensive applications that LQMs have specifically?
Yeah. Great question. It's fundamental to defense that we have quantitative models right alongside our language models. When we look at the applications for material science, for example, if you look at a F-35, there's about 1,000 pounds of rare earths in that F-35. And typically for other kinds of fighter jets, we have to get away from that dependency. We have to design new kinds of materials that move us away from the dependency on neodymium, for example, for magnets. You cannot have a fighter jet without high performance magnets. Magnets that can withstand huge high temperatures, as an example. So we've got to find new formulations. AI that's built on engineering and physics can do that. AI based on cat pictures and Reddit cannot do that. So that's what we've got to move beyond that LLM, and it's been very exciting. We've also now seen real big movement in the quantum space. This past 12 months, Ilya and Olivia, as you know, has been a big movement. Announcements from Google, announcements from Caltech, and others have moved forward Q-Day.
Right.
Q-Day is that day that we've talked about. Right. We talked about it on stage last year, Ilya, as you remember. And at that time, we were talking about maybe 2030, 2032 as the time frame. Well, just in the time that you and I were speaking on stage, it has now moved up by 3-4 years, and it's now clear from government sources, Google, Caltech, and others, that 2029 is the year we got to focus on of having scaled quantum computers that are going to start to crack RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, ECC, and other critical protocols. That's our whole economy and defense infrastructure run on those protocols. So I think we're going to see good movement from the US government and other governments in the next 6 months on this topic. It's a key defensive issue.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, Jack, since last time we talked, I think you've expanded your footprint abroad.
Yeah.
Tell us more about where did you see, so like an audience that is willing to move out and really get ahead in this quantum space.
Well, we're definitely seeing, obviously, here in the US and here in DC, a lot of activity. We're mainly private sector. We're more than 90% revenue in the private sector, but definitely seeing activity here in the US. Europe, as it starts to stand up with a better defensive posture, we're seeing interest there. But I would really highlight the Gulf region.
Right.
The Gulf region has been really active for us. We announced, since we last spoke, deals with Bahrain as an example. Bahrain is looking, and other countries in the Gulf region, looking to diversify their economy and going beyond just some natural resources, for example, into biotech. Now, normally, if you go into biotech as a novel area of your economy, you'd have to spend 30, 40 years building up that infrastructure. Now, with our software and with our partnership with Bahrain, we hope in the next just few years to start pumping out drug candidates for key diseases in the region and globally. Similarly, we're very active in the Gulf region in the energy space, oil and gas space, and that's really where catalysts come into play. When you take a barrel of crude oil out of the ground, that's just a barrel of crude oil. To turn it into something useful, gasoline, jet fuel, naphtha, you've got to have catalysts. Catalysts are those chemicals that allow us to move forward with the reaction, lower the energy, do it quickly, but don't get used up. And it's very hard to design these. We just published the frontier model in catalytic chemistry. We did that with the help of Nvidia, and now we're getting usage across many, many geographies of that model. So the Gulf region has really stepped up in a big way, and I think that will continue over the next few years.
Fascinating. No, I mean, that's incredible. Huge progress in 12 months since we last talked. Well, less than 12 months, actually.
Yeah. We have one last question for you, Jack.
Sure.
We've talked a little bit about AI, we've talked about quantum and the future of these systems. As these technologies begin to converge, what excites you most about the convergence of these technologies in the coming decade?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, obviously, we called our company Sandbox AQ. The A is for AI, the Q is for quantum, because these are the two twin engines of innovation and transformation for our economy and for the defense posture. When we look at the competitive posture of the United States around the world, it's fundamental that we win not just on the bits, but also on the atoms, right? And that's why you need AI and you need quantum. We've got to make sure that as we get new kinds of drones out there, as an example, we are using materials that can let these drones fly farther, that they can have more capabilities. In the face of electronic warfare, we also need to think about the navigation of these drones. How do they navigate in the face of jamming? And that, again, means a quantitative AI. A large language model is not trained to navigate in the face of electronic warfare. Quantitative AI models can do that. So I think when you look at the nature of, you look at Russia, Ukraine, you look at what's happening in the Middle East and the Gulf region, these are all indications of how we have to move very, very quickly and very aggressively into these new kinds of AI. And then as quantum comes up, right now today we're using quantum techniques right now on GPUs, and I think in the next few years we're going to see quantum computers rise up as well. And that's both positive and negative. Negative because it will start cracking the cryptography, so we've got to move to the post-quantum cryptography, but we also can use quantum to accelerate the work we do on the quantitative side. So it's a very exciting moment.
Jack, Sandbox AQ, thank you so much.
Great to
Look
see you,
forward
Eli.
to
Great
seeing
to
you
see
next
you.
year, Jack.
Excellent, Eli.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Olivia, appreciate it.
Have you.